Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.
Now, very happy to say we're joined by Willie Anderson, man of the moment, who's written his new book, Crossing the Line, alongside Brendan Fanning. And Willie has given up some time to chat to us about it. Willie, you're very welcome. Great to have you on.
Thanks very much, Joe. Yeah, delighted.
How have the last couple of weeks been? The book is out there now. It's being talked about. It's being read. Give us what are people saying to you?
Yeah, well, honestly, I've had a lot of good, very positive feedback. I think a lot of people, were surprised at the content of the book in the terms of, it wasn't rugby as much as well. There was a lot of rugby in it, but more about life and a whole life. Well, nearly a whole life. Hopefully, another 20 years in me, But I think that surprised a lot of people, and a roller coaster of emotions from a lot of people. People were laughing out loud. I know quite a few, even men, have said to me, I was in tears at a couple of times. So, in a way, I suppose that's the way I wanted it. It was an honest appraisal of my life for my grandchildren. Also, wanted to be not a sycophantic book. I wanted something that was real. It wasn't sort of. And I'm delighted Brendan did such a fantastic job, because he knew me before all of this, and we've become brilliant friends. I think he speaks with a Tyrone accent, and I speak with a North Dublin accent at the moment. So we talk to each other most days about different aspects and not just about the book. I've had a tremendous response, and people who've read it, particularly if they read it right to the end.
Would you be considered by friends, acquaintances, former teammates to be an open book? Would they be very aware of a lot of the things they were about to read, or would this have come as a bit of a surprise to lots of people that you might talk to and be in your world?
Yeah, it's funny actually you should say that. A lot of people didn't realise the extent of some of the things that I had gone through. My sister said to me after she read the book, and she was going to read it a second time, she said, I didn't know half the things that you went through, or half the things that would happen to you. Some guys were quite surprised at how honest it was in terms of the extent of all of the things that I mentioned. And we deliberated quite a bit about some of the things we were going to put in, but I was very adamant that, whatever was going to go into the book was going to be a true reflection of what my life was. And
Willie, what was
the ups, downs,
and the downs? Yeah, what were some of the things you did deliberate over putting in, Willie?
Well, obviously, the accident was going to be, the tragedy of what it was. We talked about that, but I wanted it in because it was a massive part of two families, certainly this family and Glenn's family. So that was one, and the drinking as well. I could have glossed over that, but I made sure that went in as well, because it was in effect that was part of it. That whole factor, even though it was a theme in my life the whole way through. However, it came to a head. So I just wanted to be as honest as possible in that sense. And then the rugby parts, there's a lot of it had been covered, sort of the triple crown and that sort of crack had been covered. And then there was other aspects of, the haka, certainly all of the aspects of the haka and the aftermath of the haka and that sort of thing. Mm. So, yeah, I've had tremendous response, and people actually have written me notes or texts and said, how they felt about it, and it moved a lot of people, and from that point of view, I suppose, in ways, that's the legacy I want to leave for my grandchildren, because that's really why I said when Brendan asked me why do I want to do this book, I said, well, I want it really for my grandchildren. Two wee boys at the moment, and they might see me as a bit of a maverick, but somebody that's, stuck the course and, was honest and and had perseverance and diligence and, honesty to get there, which is probably rubbed off on some of the kids,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where to start with. There's just so much in it, as you said. And I mean, I hadn't intended to start with the accident, but seeing as it comes up, and I've just finished reading it today, so it's almost that final third of the book. For me to bluntly sum up your life at this stage, it's 1992, and obviously your playing career is, ongoing, coming to an end, and you're working away as well. These are the amateur days, and it's a nothing day. It's dropping off Andy Leslie for you train home, the former All Black, and an incident which could happen 1,000 times differently happens, unfortunately, the wrong way for you. And there's a tractor behind a school bus and a young boy runs out and you can't stop in time. And the book, in a kind of harrowing way, the image you mentioned is the school tie on the windshield, which must be a dreadful image to have in your head, I'm sure. And this was in Derry, and Glenn McClernand is the boy. You talk to his parents and they're happy for you to name him. And the effect that has on you over the following years, decades, it really comes across in the book, like just the crushing, Willie, the crushing sense of guilt. Like, to live with guilt is one of the worst things to have to live with. I'll follow your lead here. What do you want to say about all that?
Well, I mean, look, it's called tragedy in the book, and that's what it was. It was a tragedy for both families. It's not a day that goes past that I wouldn't think of Glenn. There wouldn't be a day that would go past. I was very, I was very touched by the fact that Glenn's father, was very forthcoming and, not saying happy, but he wasn't in any way disrespectful and very respectful of what I was doing. And I wanted to be in the memory of Glenn, and that's what I said to him. And he was very charitable in the terms of what he said I could put into the book, and, he was happy enough to go in. But at the end of the day, it was a tragedy for their family. They've moved over to Cornwall. I was very fortunate to have a tremendously fantastic lady and my wife Heather, and my family who helped me through, and my brother and my sister and people around, and Monsignor O'Byrne was massive to help me go through that time too. Even though he was a priest up, and he touched me very much. And I from that I knew that I changed a little bit. Not to say too much of it. I changed, maybe prioritized my life a little bit more in terms of, right, okay, I'm going to prioritize my family over more rugby, where I had been rugby, and that I did that, and but at the end of the day, it's something I have to live with. It had an effect on me massively, and it had obviously a massive effect on Glenn's parents and family as well. But I got a very touching letter from a lady in Meath about that she'd seen a passage from the book in a paper, and she wrote to me about her son who was tragically killed by a drunk driver, actually. And she was able to, I was able to, sympathise with her, and I wrote back to her, and she's writing a book about it, and at least it sort of kind of touched someone, validated in the sense of putting it into the book.
I should say, actually, for anyone who hasn't read the book and they might be putting two and two together here and getting five, you didn't have drink taken here in this incident. It's for your sake. I think it's fair to say that. Willie, do you get to a point with something like this where you just have to forgive yourself and that helps the guilt ease, or do you just have to try and put it to the back of your mind? Like, is it as difficult now if you think about it as ever, or how do you begin to almost heal yourself. And I know you're not saying, I know you're not saying you're the victim in this, but it is two families affected. But so how do you get to that point?
Well, I think with any, situation like that, no matter whether it's with your parents or whether it's your brother, your sister, wherever somebody passes away, that's close to you. And this was a terrible tragedy. However, and I just look at it as a door, and the door will shut, but it'll never close. And you have to try to ensure that door isn't too wide. That the gap in the door and in closing it'll never close, but you don't want it too open. And that's the way I look at it. And I try to make sure if I do think about it, then I think of something, then more positive, i.e. my family. And that's the way I look at it. And that's the way I looked at the way I said I have to prioritize my family, and I have to give to them. And ensure every day is a great day, because nobody knows what the next second is, and it was 1 second. So that's the way I've kind of looked at it. And in fairness, I've been, very surrounded by tremendous support and that, and, it manifests itself eventually into maybe not, me maybe lending myself to drink, to get over it. But that's just probably a product.
You said earlier you could really have brushed by the drinking, and you really could have, because a lot of this book, because we've started off talking about this situation, so obviously it's desperately sad, but a lot of this book, there are very happy times, and it's friendships, and it's rugby, and drink is, the lubricant right the way through that, and there's great nights with drink and all the rest of it. So you could have easily, it wasn't as if I was reading this book thinking, well, Willie has an issue with drink here. But so is it the accident that in particular changed your relationship? Because you said maybe after the accident, that's where it went from after the matches and kind of celebrations to maybe whiskey at home. And I think there was an Ireland match in Twickenham, and you just, I think you met some people the night before when you were the forwards coach at this stage, because you just didn't want to be in your hotel room with your thoughts. So is it that kind of period, 90s into early 2000s, where the relationship changes?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't massive, but I think probably as well. When you're coming to the end of you're coming to the end of your career in coaching or teaching or whatever, and you're starting to see the end coming, and that might have been had an effect as well. There's no doubt it had an effect, but drinking was all. Because I was such a fit, I trained so hard. I mean, in the 80s and the early 90s, I would have trained so hard to and we had nights crack, but I wouldn't have touched it until a Saturday night, after a match, and had a few beers and that sort of crack. Yeah. And sometimes I wouldn't have drank at all. But then I think as time went on, it probably had an effect, and certainly the accident had an effect on me. Maybe I was subconsciously trying to, black it out, and it was creeping in, and particularly every year it would creep in, at the date. And then I went and got therapy for it, and certainly it really helped. It was great, because it actually, going to Addiction NI and talking to the guy, and he was brutally honest with me, and then I was able to pinpoint it, and he said, well, there's your difficulty. And then by even admitting to it, then it was like a weight off my shoulders, and then I was able to say, right, that's it, drink gone, and I haven't drank for 6 years now. So yeah, and I find that I'm actually probably a better crack now than I was then.
Yeah, you say that in the book.
I can remember all this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I can remember all the stories. I can remember the stories.
You can embarrass everyone the next morning.
Exactly.
Because you mentioned
that's probably what. Go ahead. No, that's where I wanted those things to be. And look, as other people have been in the situations like this, they've had ups and downs and tragedies and situations, or taking on substances or whatever. It's not just. It's something I had to, because it was part of my life, and I had to get that part of my life, to be honest about it all. And that was the way we decided we were going to go out. And on occasion, it was tough to be able to admit to, even for the book purposes. But I knew this was part of the therapy as well.
Was it, yeah?
I feel it has, helped everything. I'm delighted to have got it, the book finished, and I feel it's from the response, it's been something has hit a lot of people. A lot of people have said, "Jeepers, I didn't know about that," and it's made me reflect on my life. And if I've got that response, brilliant.
Because your family all the way through are just this very supportive, brilliant network. I mean, your wife Heather features from really page one and is constantly there throughout, and your children Jonathan, William and Thomas and Chloe, you can tell just how proud you are of them. And even with the drinking, for instance, and I know they all chip in at different times for you, but it's, Thomas sends you a letter after I think it was a fall on the stairs and a heart condition was diagnosed, but he sends you a letter saying, "Hey, listen, we want you around." Like, you've got to confront this. You really have to. And I can imagine as a father, that's a difficult letter to ignore. And I suspect for him, it's a difficult letter to write, but it gave a real sense of, God, there's a real bond in that family, that he's willing to do that and you're willing to listen at the end.
Yeah. And look, there's a lot of, they chipped away, and that was probably one of the turning points. And then for him to say, "Look, I've got you booked in, you're going." And but I think that manifests itself one day whenever my Heather's father, who died a couple of years ago, he's 95, and he was like the kind of sort of top man in our family, because he outlived everyone, including my parents and Heather's mother, by 10 or 12 years. And I was in the car with Thomas and his grandfather. So there was 3 generations in the car. And like, it spurred him to say, "Look, I want this I want to be you, me, and my grandchildren at my age." So, that had a massive effect on me. I want my grandchildren to be as old as I am, and you there, and me there at your age, and they there at like 25 or 30. And that really hit home. That and I said, "Jeepers!" And now when I see my grandchildren, I just think, "Jeepers! I want to be on this planet as long as I can with these 2 idiots, these ones, and they're brilliant, they're like, after a day taking them, you're like a zombie, but like, it's fantastic." So, and that, and Jonathan, was helpful, and Chloe was outstandingly helpful as well, in all aspects. In fact, Heather and Chloe are over in Paris seeing Jonathan's show tomorrow. So, it's a heavy show, first one in 18 months. So, and Chloe's getting her wedding dress, Jonathan's designer wedding dress. So, it's fantastic, it's just unbelievable. And they all got part of us, Heather's father was the designer, came down through Heather, and Jonathan is the designer, he was a designer, and they all probably got that sort of drive and determination from both of us, and probably my sort of kind of really drive and determination. And fair play to them, they've done well. I'm very proud of them. Very proud of them all.
I hope Jonathan's not charging Chloe for the dress. No, he's not. But it's lovely to see it. And it's not often
my brother designed this wedding dress for me. It's very special. It sometimes I pinch myself because he's like I'm only a speck on the fame sort of spectrum. He's the real deal, like, you know, worldwide fame. But you know, fairness to them, it never went to their head. Any of the kids, you know, they were all feet on the ground and always trying to get to the next point, you know. But yes, it's great, you know, it's fantastic, and I have to thank them so much because of the effort they put into, you know, helping me on my journey as well, you know. And that's why, you know, at the end of the day, that's, you know, money's never been a driver to me. It's just about being family and everybody having enough to get through, and it's, you know, it's great, you know, the opportunity to be able to live their own lives, you know, and we can help them along if we can, you know.
Yeah. One last point about this whole period then, because I want to talk about the playing days. If we've started at part two, if, you know, that terrible day in 1992, the accident while you're still a player is, you know, prompts and defines maybe in certain ways the following couple of decades. That's also a period where you do some coaching. So, for instance, if people, you know, may or may not realize, I mean, you're obviously, you go in as Irish forwards coach for a time. There's a spell at London Irish. There's time, obviously, with Matt Williams at Leinster and then at Scotland. We just talked very briefly before hitting record in this interview, and you'd been out coaching just in the, you know, this afternoon, kids or whatever. So clearly, you loved coaching, you loved the game. That period coaching, do you sum that up for us? How do you feel about that period?
I was fortunate the whole way through my life. I was a teacher. You know, I was either a teacher or a coach. You know, so the whole way from my life, I was either teaching, I was either playing, teaching, or coaching. Yeah. So I never stopped teaching. So even when I was playing rugby for Ireland and all that, I was coaching or teaching, and I was always coaching guys. And then whenever my playing days were gone, I was still even coaching then as a captain in Dungannon, because that's what you had to do. You had to coach as a captain. So, and then I had a great mentor in Jimmy Davison, who was fantastic. You know, not only helped me as a player, but helped me as a coach. And then I, you know, got into the RFU, and then I really enjoyed coaching. Even then, I'm never going to be a president of a club. I'm not going to be an alligadoo. I'd rather go out, even if I'm 70 or 75, and help kids to play the game, because to me that's what it's about. You know, that's what you give back to if you can. And then, you know, and I got into it at Dungannon to start with, and then we played London Irish, and then we thrashed London Irish, and then London Irish asked me to come over and be the director of rugby, and I went from that, and it was those 2 years were magnificent. Even though I got the sack afterwards, it was fantastic. A group of guys who were learning to be professionals, and they were just a fantastic group of guys who enjoyed playing rugby, enjoyed their company, and like I still remember leaving, you know, in tears. And literally, I was in tears. And 25 or this whole squad took me out to a pub, and they were all there, and they were devastated. And you know, when you get that togetherness, that feeling, it's unique. And then from there, I went back to Dungannon. And then I started then working with Matt. You know, after 1 or 2 years, Matt brought me in, and I did that for, you know, 3 years, part-time for the first year and full-time for the next 2 years. And that was another level of fantastic, again, taking a group of guys into the professional era. And like, again, there was some great crack and fun, and the rugby they played, it was just magnificent. And it was a style of rugby that I would like to have played, you know, keeping the ball alive, keeping the ball up, you know. We would have done lengths of continuity and all that sort of crack. And then I went to Scotland, and like it was Scotland it was great to be in and as a coach. However, it was probably a step backwards in terms of the quality of the whole regime. in regards to Leinster. Leinster would have been 10 years ahead of them in terms of everything. And that, and that was a different mindset. I don't know if we got, well, I know for a fact we didn't get it right, because I got the sack and we all got the sack. So, and a lot of people sometimes can't say, well, you were sacked. Yeah, well, that's part of life. That's part of being a coach. You don't go into it unless you want to be, you can take being sacked, because there's a fair chance you will be after 3 or 4 years, or you leave, whatever.
I know. There was a question I wanted to ask you, because it jumped out to me as very interesting kind of dynamic reading the book. So you go for the Ulster job even a couple of times and you don't get it. I know you're very hurt by that. And you even say in the book that at times it's to do with you had a slightly explosive nature. You could struggle with boundaries at times. And then I know, like, when Matt brings you on board at Leinster, he's singing your praises to someone about what a great coach you are. And whoever he's talking to says, yeah, he's told everyone he's come across to F off at some stage. And I think Matt has to say, Matt sits you down and says, look, you can't, mate. He says, mate, you can't be telling people to F off. Yeah. So there's that theme, or like even, how could I give away the whole book? There's so much in it. Like after one Heineken Cup match, you're telling yourself, don't go drinking with the players, and you went drinking with the players, and you and Liam Toland do an analysis of the loss, and you push Andy Dunn a bit out of the way. And so there's these moments which would like not look good on a CV or not look good in the professional era. And yet at the same time, you seem to have gone through life and be so popular with so many people and struck up such great friendships. And even just there talking about like the London Irish lads having to get together in a pub for you. So they clearly like loved you, so you had this, and this is the question. You obviously had this ability to form really great relationships with people. And then there is, as you said, the explosive side at times as well. So I'd be really curious for your thoughts on all that and how you kind of navigated that world.
Yeah, I think that, I probably had the Ulster job, I knew that probably, and I developed this, I developed this scenario whereby when I took Dungannon to when we went and we won the All-Ireland, which was a 3-year journey, I actually had a manager. I actually had a Willie Anderson manager. It wasn't a manager of Dungannon. It was a Willie Anderson manager and Davy Hazlett. And he helped me. And probably I needed the whole way through, even if I was going for the Ulster job, I would have needed someone to say, right, look, because you have an affinity with the players. And probably the thing that I got across with players was they trusted and respected me. I mean, like 99% of them would have done that. And that's what you have to have. And you have to have a degree of empathy as well. Because there was guys I had to put my arm around and look and say, look, you're not on today, or I can't get you that amount of money, or, cheapest guys was at my table on occasions in London Irish crying because they were treated so badly. And if you have that relationship with players, and you're very forthright, and you're passionate about your game, then you'll have them on your side. And if you have that degree of understanding, where we chat to players and talk to them and find out about them, know their personalities, and what makes them tick, what does make them tick. And then you have a lot of guys who are in the business of rugby who've never coached, and I probably found that difficult to maybe, ascertain. There's guys appointing coaches and they have never coached. They've never actually had any experience of either coaching or managing a professional outfit, and they're making judgments on your life. And I suppose in ways I was very angry, probably the word was, when I didn't get the job for Ulster. I felt that I could have done a job there. I probably needed support around me. I just knew that I was very passionate about, what Ulster. It was great to, at the end, getting into Ulster and being the sort of, the forwards academy coach and that sort of thing. And it was great to be in there and seeing a lot of kids coming through with the values that I, not the values that diminish in any way, from Ulster. That just had changed slightly from where I was when I played for Ulster in the 80s and what our standards were. And I just felt that slightly, they were slightly askew. But anyway, look, yes, I would have to admit I probably had an authority scenario, but I know if I was managed correctly, or if I was possibly given the confidence, you can do the job. But there's another factor as well in this, so in the fact that a lot of professional people now, or professional bodies, they might want someone that they can control. Unless that person's strong enough. They want somebody they can control. I'm not saying that that person that's scared of being out of control, but they want someone that they can control. Even though they might know anything about coaching or whatever, they still want somebody they can control. And maybe I was the type of person who I knew that I was very strong-willed and in my philosophy of rugby and how I would like the game to be played. And some people may not have liked that. So that's another factor as well in, when I was coaching the forwards for Ireland, and again, we were making unbelievable, stretches in terms of how we're playing and the width of our game and our continuity and offloading and keeping it alive. And then, they wanted somebody else. So they wanted Paul Whelan there. So even though the players wanted me, the authorities wanted someone else. So, I just said, well, look, I'm not going to be worried about this. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And Wales, and Wales that speeded the thing up because they hadn't really helped me with my scenario with the tragedy. So, but like in terms of coaching, I love it. I just feel I've still got the music in me. And that's why, it's lovely to go to school and say, right, there's your blank piece of paper and, let's go, and it's fantastic because when I was working with Ulster, it wasn't the blank sheet of paper. This is the way you have to organize these players. They have to be in pods and all this sort of. I'm saying, well, it's not the way, I want to see the game played. And look, that's their way, and it's successful, and good luck to them. But I just feel that I'd like to think that if I was coaching kids and that they were enjoying it and there was a smile on their faces, that there's a fair chance they might play it after school, because there's so many kids now do not play the game after school because it's real.
Well, funny, listen to you talk. I wouldn't say you massively enjoyed the Lions South Africa series.
Well, I just said to myself, in 1973, I saw a Barbarians match, and I showed some people that one day, and they said, "Oh my God, that's unbelievable rugby." And then I said, "Well, I actually was Mervyn Davies because that's why I grew a moustache and had a headband, and my mate was J.J. Williams, and that was the '74 Lions." And I'm saying, is not just what you want to be. You want to be a barbarian. You want to be a lion. And I'm saying, who would want to be a lion after that series? So I'm not saying, that you don't want to be, but like, jeepers, that was. And then I switch over and I watch the All Blacks and saying, no, that's the way I would like the game being played.
Yeah.
That's the way we should be playing the game.
Willie, it says something about this book and about your life. I don't think there's many guests that I would be talking to for nearly half an hour. And if they had been in a prison in military dictatorship Argentina, it wouldn't be mentioned till now. So like that show gives you a sense of this rather strange life that you've lived. If I was to kind of brutally sum up, so the passages in your childhood are, really beautiful as well. And got your mother's schedule and the hard work on that farm and, your father, a tough man. And you paint such a vivid picture there. And then rugby comes along through school. And by the time 1980 comes along, you're on a tour with the Penguins and you You do a thing I would say a lot of people your age do, which is something silly on the way home, and you grab the Argentinian flag as a souvenir, and the price you pay is quite extraordinary. How long were you in prison for over there again, all told, in 1980?
Yeah, and all told, I was there in prison for nearly a month, and then I was altogether 3 months after that. So it was nearly 4 months in total in Argentina until I got, out. But saying that, rugby was my passport. I saw the world through it, and that was fantastic. And even to see a military dictatorship on the inside of jail, it was horrific. It is no doubt. And again, I was lucky because I had been a year later or a year and a half later. I don't know if I'd have made it back because Britain were at war with Argentina for Falklands.
And we should say your British passport was very enticing to them. I mean, they liked the look of your blue passport as opposed to the fellas with the green passports.
They said, like, this happy days. We've got a great sort of, and they thought it was going to be a really big sting in terms of we've got somebody who is really disrespected the flag, our national emblem, and very much patriotic emblem. And it goes up in the morning and it comes down at night, and we cherish it. And as I said to somebody, whenever the next day, whenever the flag was given back, they anointed it with holy water and put it back up again. So I mean, it was a fairly big. The street was stopped and all that sort of crack. But they were, and then they realized. I think they realized. Jeepers, this is only a prank. This is a rugby tour. These guys, this guy doesn't even live in England. I mean, he lives in Ireland, in north of Ireland. So, but even saying that, they could have made it an example. And certainly, whenever I got the word to start with, it was. I mean, I nearly collapsed whenever the guy told me like some of these guys went to be executed. I mean, I was going from this is a prank to. My goodness, I could be not leaving here. So, and having said that, when I got out from jail and I was in sort of city arrest, the people of Argentina were fantastic. So the people that I met were just fantastic. I just couldn't believe that I was still there after 3.5 months. Like, what are you doing here? I mean, even though we were like. Front page, middle page, back page, every page in the paper for 5 days. It was like explosive stuff. But as I said, I could have told Maggie Thatcher at that stage there was definitely going to be a war.
It's trouble ahead. Ulster in the 1980s were a brilliant force and were Interpro champions for however many years running. And you mentioned Jimmy Davidson and his presence, and being in Argentina probably slowed your chance of getting that first cap a touch. So your first cap for Ireland is at 29 years of age. Mick Doyle, Australia, within 4 months you win a Triple Crown. You're at the 87 World Cup. Preparations for that was an eye-opener reading about preparations for that, I can tell you. You do talk about that moment against Australia, making your debut, and what's really at the forefront of your mind is your parents in the crowd and almost a sense of, God, this wasn't all a pipe dream and this is what it was for, and this is why I've been a bit mad for the last 10 years and chasing this.
Yeah, and look, I suppose that was a big driving force as well because, they'd spent a lot of money getting me out of Argentina, like a fortune, like, today's would have been 100,000, but it was 10,000 then.
Wow.
I had tunnel vision for a lot of time in my life to get to that point. A lot of things went to the wayside, but I just had this desire ever since I was a cub. But that drove me as well. And I knew that I was able to do it because I was playing against people like Michael Gibson and Donald Spring who had already played for Ireland. And I said, well, I'm taking these guys on and I'm coming out on top against these guys. I've got the confidence to be able to do it. But to have achieved it and to have my parents there and my brother and my sister and Heather, my wife, and all. I mean, that was just something unbelievably special. Like, I was in tears, with the national anthem going, because I knew whenever I'd heard the national anthem on that patch of land in Lansdowne Road, that I had achieved what I dreamed to achieve. And then when you get a taste, like everybody, you don't want a one-cap wonder. You want to make sure you get picked the next day. So it was just fantastic. And like, we had a great game, and those guys like Michael Bradley, his first cap that day, and we've been friendly since, and Nigel Carr, and just a lot of Ulster men, and it was just very special. Very special.
Yeah. I presume it was a long time before you could go a day without someone asking you about the All Blacks.
Well, like, it's cheapers. I suppose it's iconic. I mean, it's lived on a long time, and I look, as I said to my kids sometime, cheapers, if I had £1 for every time somebody looked at that Haka video, I would not be sitting here, writing a book. I'd be on an island somewhere. But no, it's fantastic, and it's all down to Jimmy Davis, and like, I suppose he said, look, I've got the captain here. He's the right mug. He'll do it. He will definitely go through the wall. So I was putting them up anyway, but and ways I've got pictures, and I use the pictures, for clubs and charity work and that sort of thing. It's great as well. So it's.
You say in the book, like, I think the All Blacks were on tour, obviously, and like the week before Newport were playing them, and they had tried to ignore it in their own half and went into a little huddle. But the All Blacks, sensing opportunity, started walking right up to the huddle, like total embarrassment, invading their patch. And so Jimmy D, as you call him, all week, we got to do something about this. We got to meet this head on. So it's no surprise come match day that you are wound up. I mean, the best part of it is Davy Irwin and Phil Matthews trying to support you, but clearly not wanting to go along with this at all. No, talk to the boys about it just one day. But you see, it was Jimmy Davis, his psychology, and he was so much into psychology. He was fantastic. And he just said, look, and you watch this weekend, like, it's the same this weekend. They'll do the Haka, right? They're playing against South Africa. And what happens? The crowd applauds the Haka. So immediately everybody in the stadium is applauding the Haka. That means they're applauding the opposition, particularly if you go to Lansdowne Road or Twickenham or Murrayfield or Cardiff Arms Park, as it was. So, I mean, he said, we're turning that around. We are turning that sort of deal around. So, in fairness, I have never, honestly, and I've been very fortunate to have been in some fantastic stadiums. That was, without a doubt, the greatest atmosphere I ever felt in my life. I thought the crowd were going to come onto the pitch. It was just immense. And we had them, we had the crowd behind us. They went ballistic, and unfortunately, they were just too good. Yeah. Needless to say, IRFU, not for the first or last time, aren't happy with you.
No, and now will the RFU, because they were even chipping in as well. I remember people in the Times and the Telegraph and all saying, this is ridiculous, this is not cricket. So I said, well, jeepers, just because you didn't think of it first. But no, they weren't happy.
Listen, Willie, I should let listeners know, I haven't really done the book justice here, because there's so much in it. It's hard to get everything across in an interview, but it's highly recommended, and Brendan Fanning's done a great job. So again, I'll hold it up for anyone streaming the show. It's Crossing the Line, Willie Anderson. Not the kind of rugby book you're going to read, I can tell you, compared to what we're used to a lot of the time. So well done. Best of success with it. And thanks so much for coming on, chatting to us a bit about it, Willie.
Thanks very much, Joe. And thank you very much for giving me your time. You're a star man.
Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.